I read in one of the newspapers this morning the headline, Cox Defiant. I do want to say that I don't feel defiant. In fact, I told my wife this morning I hate a fight.
Indeed, to be honest, back home before we went to the press conference, I was in tears over having to do it. I kept thinking of the occasion when I was a boy, about 12 years old, when a friend of my father's had been asked by President Coolidge, I suppose it was, to do something, and he had agreed to do it, giving up something he personally very much wanted to do. And I had said to Father, Father, why did Mr. So-and-so agree to do that when he didn't want to? And the response was, when the President of the United States asks you to do something, you do it.
On this occasion, Cox was not going to do it. He explained in a fireside chat to the nation why the law had to come first.
When criminal wrongdoing is the subject of investigation, it is simply not enough to make a compromise in which the real evidence is available only to 2 or 3 men operating in secrecy.
Do you consider the tapes absolutely vital to the case you're discussing?
I think it is vital to know.
Clarify or amplify if possible the 2 questions.
I have sort of a naive belief, if you'll forgive me for being corny, that what's right will prevail in the end.
I frankly was stunned by how well he did, because Archie was not totally a public person. And this was, in the good sense, a superb political effort. It was absolutely convincing. It was human. It was almost endearing.
Any way whatsoever.
Then my question, sir, was how could you expect to succeed in this job? How could you expect to succeed?
Well, I thought it was worth a try. I thought it was important. If it could be done, I thought it would help the country. And if I lost, what the hell?
Mr. Cox, let me ask you about... Excuse me, Mr. Cox. The reporters over here are...
I'm sorry. I'm very sorry. Yes.
By the time the news conference was finished, even the skeptical Washington press corps had been won over.
I don't know the answer to that.
Sir, you're a great American. You really are.
At Cox's public show of defiance, Nixon resolved to have him sacked at once. For the Attorney General and his immediate subordinates, the moment of decision had come.
Richardson's secretary put her head in the door and said, the Attorney General would like to see you. And I went in, and there was Ruckelshaus and Richardson and, 2 or 3 of Richardson's young aides. And it still hadn't crossed my mind what was going to happen.
It was clear that Cox was going to go. It was only a question of how, not whether. Elliot said, I'm not going to do it. And I said, well, not me either. I decided that some time ago. I'm not interested in being part of this exercise.
And at that moment, for the first time, it occurred to me that I was the 3rd in line in the Department of Justice.
At that moment, Richardson said to Bork, well, Bob, what are you going to do? You're next.
I said, let me think. And I got up and I began pacing around the office while they talked about something else. And finally I said, yes, I can fire him, but I'll resign immediately afterwards.
Bork said that he had felt for some time that Cox was not conducting himself correctly, that he was not doing his job right, and indeed should be fired.
And so Ruckelshaus and I said, well, in these circumstances, Bob, you will have to go ahead and fire him. We can't have a situation in which this goes all the way down to some Deputy Assistant Attorney General, with everybody above him having left. The business of the government has to go on.
The President was frantic to prevent a rash of resignations at the Justice Department. He stood by as White House counsel Len Garment phoned the Attorney General. But Richardson was firm. When appointed, he had undertaken to protect Cox's independence. and he would not now break his word.
The president said, I'm not surprised that that pious bastard cares more for his ass than his country.
We were all very stricken by the moment. And Richardson left to present his resignation to the president.
The beginning of the conversation was really quite tense and difficult because he started talking about the Middle East. This was the President of the United States, Commander-in-Chief. And he went on to say, you realize that Brezhnev could make a very serious miscalculation in the light of what could happen if you go forward. I was considerably shaken, but I said, Mr. President, I don't feel that I have any choice. I cannot do it. And the President said, Elliot, I'm sorry you choose to put your purely personal commitments ahead of the public interest. And I could feel the blood rushing to my head, and I could have made a very angry response. But what I did say in as level of voice as I could muster, I said, Mr. President, it would appear that you and I have a different perception of the public interest.
No one yet knew it, but the Saturday Night Massacre had begun. Next on the list was Richardson's deputy, William Ruckelshaus. Al Haig telephoned him with an ultimatum. Fire Cox, you've no choice.
Haig went into the crisis in the Middle East. He finally mentioned, didn't you realize this was an order from your commander-in-chief? This was after several minutes of conversation, and I said, come on, Al, what are you going to do, get a tank down here and blow me out of my office? I can't do this.
General reaction to the developments today?
Well, there'll be an announcement out of the White House later on. I can't say a thing.
There will be?
Does it have to do with the resignation of the Attorney General? Well, it might, but you'll have to get it from them. Excuse me.
Thank you, Bill.
When Ruckelshaus went home, the press was still in the dark about how many Attorney Generals Nixon had gone through. The succession now passed to the number 3 man at the Justice Department.
So I got in Bork, the Solicitor General, a great constitutional lawyer.
Bob Bork was a different kind of fellow. He was a patriot, and I think a jurist of renowned dimensions, far better than either of his 2 superiors.
I went downstairs, and there were a White House driver, Bizarre in the back seat, Garment in the right front seat, the passenger seat.
And we plunked him down between... he sat between Bizarre and myself, so he couldn't bolt out of the door.
So I got him, we went over to the White House, to Haig's office. And Haig began explaining the international situation and how the president couldn't be faced down and so forth. And I said, I'm going to fire him. The only question is whether I resign immediately afterwards or not. He didn't look like he was interested too much in whether I resigned immediately afterwards or not, as long as I fired him. Haig took me to the Oval Office. And as I recall, the lights were kind of dim in there, and the place was very gloomy. They had not planned this kind of a massacre at all.